Everyone, would be asking, are you not over it? And I'm like, how could you be over a loss of a child?
Wow. So why do you believe it is important for children to have a life coach?
There's so much more pressure. You have the social media pressure, academic pressures.
We're
Parents
all
come to
looking
me.
for a magic
Exactly.
pill, right? A quick fix.
Exactly. Because every child is different.
Yeah.
The way they think, the way they learn.
Welcome to The Search for Wellness, a podcast dedicated to discovering the path to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Join us on this heartfelt journey as we share inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to nurture your mind, body, and spirit.
All right. Lana is a dedicated life and academic coach for teens and preteens. Inspired by her own profound loss, she passionately helps kids build resilience and essential life skills. Lana works with children to enhance their ability to manage stress, develop a growth mindset, and communicate effectively. She also teaches time management and emotional regulation. Through practical strategies and heartfelt support, Lana guides children and their families through academic and personal challenges.
Yes.
Welcome, Lana.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to go straight into it. When we talk about profound loss, what was your profound loss?
So back in 2019, I lost my firstborn son, Luca, at 38 weeks pregnant. Just actually when I was about to deliver him, we were at the hospital and they were just strapping me in to check the heartbeat. And unfortunately, there was no heartbeat. So that was my introduction into parenthood. And of course, it was heartbreaking, probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to go through. But through that, I'd say, and I think my husband I have to give him credit for that, was that it was a powerful catalyst for growth. And, through that struggle, I definitely understood the power of vulnerability and also emotional health going through that loss. Yeah.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
But honestly, after everything that you have been through, I think you are doing a fantastic job. And I always say this, when you're at your lowest low, there's only one way to go, and that is up.
100%. 100%. When you're at your lowest low, that is the I'd say the, what am I trying to say? Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
No.
It's like the gray, it's the silver lining on that in a way, is that the only way is to go is up when you're hit rock bottom. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, totally. So what inspired you to become a life coach for children?
So for me, I think it was firstly being an academic, a learning support teacher at one of the international schools in Singapore.
Okay.
I was working with a lot of learning support kids, but not only learning support children. And I realized that there was a lot of them struggling, not only with academics, but with social dynamics, with, also a lot of international transitions, as a lot of them were expat kids as well. And I saw that there was a real need to give, a child the space to guide them, to motivate them, and also allow them to be able to reflect a little bit more. And that was really my inspiration of coming out of, teaching and saying, okay, I want to be an academic and life coach to help these children understand more about themselves, to create more self-awareness within themselves.
Nice. And my kids had their first life coaching session with you the last Saturday. And I think it went really well. When I asked them and I spoke to them, and I said, and this is my twin boys who are turning 11 soon. And I asked them, I was like, so how did it go? And they were like, oh, your friend's really nice. She's very friendly. And I was like, well, that's good to know. I was like, do you want to share anything that you shared? And they were like, well, we just shared it that we were a bit nervous about going to the tennis academy in France. And that was nice that they were very comfortable sharing that with you. And I feel like what you are doing, it's in a way, it's a very unique place to be, because you're not their teacher, you're not their parent. You're just this individual who's there to just listen to what they have to share.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what kids need. They really need just someone to listen, to guide them, and for them to also just reflect. As you said, with your boys, there was a part of them that needed to speak about the tennis camp and all. And that's what I find interesting. I also find that I used to think that you could not coach a child so young as 11 or even younger. The youngest I've coached is actually 9. But it was really eye-opening for me to see how children are actually so much more self-aware than we give them credit for. And really just to have that space for them to speak and to reflect and to be able to talk about their emotions, that's what's really powerful. That's what's building resilience in them. They're learning more about themselves, their strengths, their challenges, what they need to overcome. And that's what I love. That's why I love to do what I do. Because I think if you nurture this at a young age, imagine what a phenomenal adult you're going to be later.
Yeah. No, totally. I agree with you. I mean, I think you said this to me before, and I will paraphrase it, is you said, we have a coach for our tennis, we have a coach for our piano, but we need a coach to help us through life.
Exactly.
Right? And it's as important, if not more important, to have that.
Yeah.
So would you like to explain to me exactly what a life coach does?
So basically what a life coach does is basically help your child navigate through life, like teach them life skills, whether it be problem solving, better communication, building self-confidence, building resilience. These are all the things, and it's different for every child. Everyone is different. Even me and you, we're all different. So sitting with a life coach or academic coach as well is we figure out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the challenges you need to overcome. And what's empowering about it is that it doesn't come from me, it comes from you. I'm there to help you discover and, be the catalyst pushing you with a few questions to go deeper into yourselves, to understand and to really figure out what are your true values? What do you really want? What's important to you? And I think that's where true empowerment comes, because you start to understand what you really want rather than someone telling you the way it should be.
And that exactly what you were saying earlier is what is going to help you through life is when you can make those decisions for yourself. Exactly. As opposed to looking for answers from outside.
Exactly.
Of you.
I think given my example, and I know you, Pooja, you've also gone through so much. I mean, life throws you sometimes real curveballs that you were not expecting. Exactly. If you had told me this, Sinavali, I would never have expected to go through. If anyone had told me that I would have lost my child at the stage I did, I would have just looked at them blankly. But because I had gone through that, I realized that I wish I had more of those skills. I think I would have also made so much more different life decisions. But prior to that, my career choices, my friends, I would have understood more of my boundaries, what was important to me. And that's why this is why I choose to coach this age group, because I think it's important to be able to understand that from a young age, because it is all about personal growth. Yeah. Coaching is personal growth. Yeah. It's a continuous progression. But if you're tuned into it from a young age, it's always going to be there for you. And you're always going to, as you navigate through life, whatever obstacles come, you're going to be self-aware of yourself to know the difference of what to do.
Totally. I agree with you. And you know what better time to start than now?
Exactly.
Yeah. When it comes to anything in life, what better time to start than now? So why do you believe it is important for children to have a life coach?
I think it's important because of the challenges that children face today. I think it's so much different from where we were growing up. There's so much more pressure. You have the social media pressure, academic pressure as well. What I see sometimes when children are studying, I was like, wow, did we study like that? This seems so much more intense than what we did.
It is, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And also the social media pressure and the outside pressure. So there's so much, and there's only so much as a parent also we can control on that, especially when it comes to outside influences. So I think it's really great for a child to have that space, to be able to talk about what's on their mind, for someone to be able to guide them, to provide them with strategies, to techniques where, they might be feeling a bit stuck. And that's also, again, building resilience, helping them also tune into what's emotionally troubling them and how they're able to see all these different options of how to, go through it and to be able to use this, to be able to push through these obstacles that they face.
So, but my daughter would be too young to start, right?
I think the age of 5 still a little bit young. I feel from 9, even I thought 9 was quite young.
Okay.
But saying that, to be honest, I feel it's also quite individual. I've had a child who was 8 years old come to me, but very mature. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention about coaching. It's like coaching can be done at any stage, but it's not a magic pill. I know a lot of sometimes, parents
we're all
come
looking
to me.
for a magic pill, right? A quick fix.
Exactly. And some parents come to me and, are expecting almost like a quick
Yeah.
fix, but it's not. It's not a quick fix. It's personal growth. And it also depends on how much your child or how much even if you're doing coaching, put into it. And that's what I always explain to my coaches, my children. I'm like, look, you need to be able to, I'm here for you to guide you. We're finding all these strategies that we're doing, but you need to be able to practice what we do. Hold yourself accountable. And I think that's important as well, because the coaching doesn't stop just during the session. It's an ongoing process. And it's also for your child to be able to practice that outside. And the more that you practice, the more that you go into those techniques or those strategies that we've spoken about, that's when you're going to see the true magic. Yeah.
So true. Okay, but what if there was somebody who was like, oh no, my child is perfect. My child doesn't need a coach. My child is doing amazing in school. He's, doing fantastic in sports. He's doing fantastic with his academics. Does a person like that also need a coach?
Absolutely. I think everyone needs a coach.
Yeah.
I think coaching is not only about problem solving,
Yeah.
it's about optimizing basically your strengths, discovering more about yourself, discovering more about, what interests you. You probably have strengths you still don't know, right? That you've not tapped into, or, hobbies that you haven't even thought of. And that's the process of coaching. We start to discover that more and more. You start to discover more of you that probably you've not questioned, because everything has been going perfect. But, there's not everything that is perfect. You're able to grow from that. So that's why I think even if your child is doing well, it's a great way as well to find out more and cultivate those skills, cultivate those strengths.
Yeah. And I feel like with my boys, and you've only had one session with them, but I'm pretty sure you've already noticed they're twins.
Yeah.
Identical, no, unidentical, completely unidentical twins, and they are completely different.
Exactly.
Chalk and cheese,
Yeah.
worlds apart, and you probably already gauged that, right?
Definitely.
So how quickly is it that you can tell what the child needs or what he needs to tap into? How many sessions does it take?
Pretty much, I would say at least 4 sessions, which is what I have a foundation session for, because it's more that time that I get to know your child, but also for your child to also be comfortable with me as well, because there has to be trust. There has to be a safe space for a child to open up. I'm glad to say that your children were quite, open with me in the first session, but sometimes it can take a while.
Yeah.
And eventually we get there, because they learn to also know the coaching process, to be like, oh, why is Lana asking me these questions? But they understand and they start to think and all. And pretty much within the first 4 sessions, I pretty much understand what your child needs. And also we discover, and I'd say I'm not the expert of it, your child is, because they're the ones that are telling me what to do. And from there, I'm able to design a tailored program for them. So that's what I'm doing right now for most of the coaches that I have. It's a tailored approach, because every child is different.
Yeah.
The way they think, the way they learn, the way they perceive, their emotions, all of these is so different. So that's what we kind of hone in on and set a program for that. But at the same time as well, I also let it go. I let the child lead, because that's where I think the magic happens. Sometimes we come in with a specific topic, but sometimes it navigates to something else. And it's great that sometimes it navigates to something else, because that's probably something that's been untapped, and that's why it's coming up.
I like that, actually, that it can navigate to something else also. And I really like, I studied health coaching, and health coaching is a very similar thing, is where you work with that person, and that person comes to decide what they need to do to improve their health. And do you think an adult also needs a life coach?
I definitely. I think everyone, if you were given that opportunity, I think everyone should have a coach. To be honest, I was coached, and I think I believed in it so much that I actually changed my profession.
So you were coached?
I was coached after my loss.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, and just by a twist of fate, I was returning back to work, and coach, and this was an opportunity offered to mothers who were coming back to work. Obviously, I was the only one who was coming back to work without my child.
Wow.
But my professional development person at school at the time said, Lana, would you like to try this? And I was really open, because at that point I was looking for things to help me move forward. And I think it was the best decision I did. My coach really gave me that space to understand my emotional vulnerability. I understood also the importance of emotional health, not to suppress it, to be okay. To let go with whatever I was feeling. And it had been months, and everyone, would be asking, are you not over it? And I'm like, how could you be over a loss of a child? you know?
Wow.
Yeah, but this is how sometimes our world is perceived, that we are forced sometimes to suppress these emotions and not to at least say it publicly. Maybe behind closed doors, but during the coaching sessions, I realized that this was very important for me, for my healing, to be able to express it, to not suppress these emotions, and to be able to talk about it and to confront it. I think to be able to confront these emotions of sadness, grief, fear, all these things that were coming up gave me an empowerment to actually move forward as well in my next 2 pregnancies. I'm happy to say that I had 2 children after my loss, but it was a very difficult challenge for me after a loss to go through a pregnancy where you're thinking, will the worst happen again? But through the coaching, it guided me through this to be able to accept these emotions, to be able to go through it. And, it's still a personal development for me. I still have days, I cannot lie, where are really sad and I miss my son. I wish things could be different, but I'm able to embrace that journey now and to be able to make it a part of my life and to be able to accept it, most importantly.
And it's, it's a harsh world we live in, right? It's a society that we live in where people think that it's very easy to just snap out of it, right? It's like, oh, are you over your little mishap, almost to say. It's like, no, I'm not. And, I need space. I need time to grieve. I need time to share, to be open, to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability is where my healing is going to start.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what happened with me, is when I became vulnerable, when I became open, and when I started sharing how I felt, is where my healing began, is in my vulnerability. And we've always been trained, our belief system and the way we've been trained is almost to like suppress.
Exactly.
To hide that emotion, to keep it locked in, to keep it, no, you don't need to share it with anyone. Kind of suffer in silence.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But it's not fair. It is really not fair to suffer in silence. And this is why the healing never happens, is when we suffer in silence, then that trauma is going to go and get stuck somewhere else in the body, and it's going to create some other issue in the body.
Exactly. And it will eventually come out on the surface, be it now, be it in 10 years, be it in 20 years. And I think that's why as well, I wanted to coach this age group, to be able to understand that, to be able to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be emotional. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It actually means that you're strong, that you're confronting it,
that you're connected to your emotions.
You're connected to your emotions, and to also to know empathy. I think that's also something we lack in our society today. And going through my loss and I definitely saw that. I know people were definitely trying to be there, some for sure, but some didn't know how to. But to be able to also be more self-aware creates empathy. You'll be able to, and that could hopefully make our world a better place as well. When we have more empathetic children, more empathetic adults, tuning more into themselves, to know, we should be treating people with kindness, that it's okay if they're emotional. It's okay, to show all of these things.
I know. And it's hard it's a lot harder for them than it is for us, because we've had to unlearn to relearn the new ways, right? Whereas with them, it's like, even as much as I will do at home, whereas with my kids, I'm always like, how you feeling? It's always driven by that word, how you feeling? Share an emotion. It's always, we try to connect to an emotion. I'm feeling grateful, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling excited, whatever it is. But then when they go into school and when they're around their friends, and they almost find it hard to share those feelings. But then having a life coach, having you there, is helping them to share that and express.
And that's great for them, because it's creating a better sense of an emotional health for them. And that also helps with mental health. Definitely, because they're able to have that outlet to express. They're not suppressing it or not having any avenue. And it's true, I know parents are always there wanting to help their kids, but it's a developmental stage as well. I think it has been proven to show that at this age group as well, they don't look to their parents anymore. They look more to outside influences to kind of guide them. So that's where as well, this being a role of a life coach and academic coach for a child makes sense as well, because it gives them that outlet to be able to express to an adult who's trained in this area as well, to support them.
And what was interesting is that I noticed one thing, is that they didn't actually ask me who you were, why you were doing this, why do we need her, they didn't even question it. It was quite surprising. to say that they didn't actually question who you are and what you were. And I think that's also because in ISK at their school they have a counselor.
Yeah.
And they have counseling sessions, and they kind of have already tapped into that, so they sort of understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm just really grateful that I have this opportunity to give this to my kids and to have you as their life coach.
Thank you.
So you tapped into something earlier that about social media. And it is a scary world out there when it comes to the social media and it comes to what our kids are being exposed to these days. It's like we try to mollycoddle them in every way possible.
Yeah.
But then we give them this thing called a smartphone. And we're like, here we go. And then we give them this thing called the internet, where they can be connected to anything and everything out there. And I am totally against giving my children a smartphone for as long as I can.
Yeah.
And totally against them being on social media for as long as I can. So I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on this.
I agree. I think for sure that's the one thing that I worry about having very young children, because you can see the addiction to it as well from a very young age. Actually, my daughter's 2, and every time we have our phone, she's wanting to grab it because she wants to keep on looking. But as you said, it's something, unfortunately, that is part of our world today, especially our children's world, where the devices, the social media, it's in schools, it's everywhere. We can't really get away from it. But what is really important, and that's where also coaching becomes really important for your child, is that by creating that self-awareness, they will know different when they're looking at social media, to filter what is reality, what is not, to not look at social media for validation as well, because they've built their inner strength, they've built their inner confidence, all the hard work that they've done to not be influenced by social media, basically. And I think that's what's really key as well, because this is something we can't control. The outside world is something we can't control, but the inner world is something that we can control. And that's where your child has the empowerment to do that, is to be able to control their mind, to be able to control what they value, what they see as true, what do they believe is wrong. These are all things that coaching helps them to do, because they create self-awareness, so that when they're looking at social media and seeing all of these negative things, they're not as affected by it, because they know themselves a lot more.
A child's prefrontal cortex is not fully developed.
Exactly.
And so for them, they don't understand, like when we go into social media and we're looking at our phone, we know, okay, I've been looking at this for too long, so we can actually like step out of it. Whereas for them, it's like, it kind of like pulls them in. And then it's like hard to get them out. And this is where there is the internet addiction that can come in, and that can just ruin your life, where you are just completely addicted to the internet. And being addicted to the internet, nothing better, nothing worse. This is just the only thing that out of life. It can ruin your life completely.
It makes them very vulnerable, as you said, to be not developed. And that's where also parents definitely, to be able to have those limitations is also really important.
And also to be a reflection, right, of what you want to set an example of. Is I cannot tell my child, you can't have a phone
and you're constantly on your phone.
And you're constantly on your phone, right?
Exactly.
That is the other thing that a lot of parents are like, oh yeah, I don't want to give my child a smartphone, but then they're on their phone all the time. They're on their social media all the time. And I think social media can be used in such a positive way. Like I try to use it in a very positive way, where I get all my positive information from social media. And if also that is another way to introduce it to a child, where yes, you can use social media, but use it in a positive way of bringing into what actually makes you, like I use it to watch these short reels on paddle. A lot, to see all these professionals playing paddle, because they're absolutely amazing and so inspirational. But I think social media can be beneficial.
100%.
But
it's just being able to educate your child what to go to watch and what to focus on, rather than all the other ridiculous things around social media. But that again comes with self-awareness, and that can be built from a young age, because you will know that, okay, this is right for me to watch. I know this is good to kind of watch, but this one it's not really good. I should stop watching it, rather than, as you're saying, being sucked into it and being pulled into it.
And so till what age would you coach?
I coach all the way up till university.
Oh, wow.
Actually, yes.
Okay.
Because it's very transitional going into school, right? When you're at primary school, then going into secondary school, then from secondary school you go to middle school, or like IGCSEs, or you hit A levels, and then from A levels you're hitting going into university. So it's always that transition going up. And as you say, the child's mind is completely developing. It's changing. They are changing as well. So to be able to touch base with a coach and understand as well, where is this change coming from? I'm now going into, a different part of my life, a different study situation, to understand how to better study during that. Like when you're studying, for example, for O levels or IGCSE, it's difficult, but when you enter A levels, it's probably more pressurized because you have more. So it's always great to have that step, with the coach helping you along the way. Again, to understand, how do you study? What's the best way for you to study? Are you an auditory learner? Are you a visual learner? Are you a tactile one? Are you a how, what, or why thinker? What is your core motivation now? Has that changed? Because this is all about personal development. As a child grows, they change. So the way that they study, the way that they look at things is changing as well. So it's great to always tap base. And it's big parts of their lives as well that's changing. Going into GCSE, going into A levels, then into university, when they're now away from their family for the first time. So again, to have that support from a coach is just an outlet for them to be able to refocus themselves, to rebuild that self-confidence if they're feeling insecure for any reason, to talk about the strategies that they want to in terms of academics. And this is all the stages that we'd be able to help them with.
So after your 4 sessions, so you do 4 sessions, 1 a week, right?
Yes.
And then after that, what happens?
It depends on the child, definitely.
Okay.
I always do 4 sessions for the foundation level, just as we said, to get to know the child. But after that, after evaluating how the 4 sessions went, it can be bi-weekly, or we continue every week, depending on where the child is at and also at the stage. So I'll be honest, a lot of students come to me, especially with end of year exams. So right now, like, my coaching calendar is full because it's obviously very high pressure. They're struggling with stress management, planning, organization. So that's when we work together, to set a tone so that they're feeling relaxed. They know what they're doing. They plan for their exams. So when they're going into there, they're in control. And that's the coaching, is to be more in control.
In control.
Exactly. But then, so that's probably every week I'll see a child. But then when there's more time, and that's why sometimes I tell parents it's better to start earlier than later.
Okay.
Because then it's a gradual progression. I see them every 4 sessions, and then we can see every 2 weeks, which is actually great. Because for me, I think to be able to give a child the chance to be able to develop the practices that we, or the strategies that we speak about within those 2 weeks, but we're going to see whether it's working or not. And then when they come back to the session, we have more to talk about, because then they're able to say, well, this worked for me, this didn't work, or this worked, so we're like, oh, we're on the right track. Let's move on to something further into that.
Wow. Interesting.
This podcast was created to inspire and connect with people. If you are liking the content of this podcast, hit the subscribe button, like, follow, and share this platform. Lots of love.
So, like, with my kids, with my boys, they're going to have these 4 sessions. And then what happens after that? Do they weave in and out, or do they continue? How does it work?
It really depends on each child. I would say there's actually no one way it goes. Usually the 4 foundation sessions is the foundation for everyone to go through, just also for me to gauge what's going on. But again, during these sessions, as I said, certain things can come up which we probably didn't anticipate. And that's when I pretty much decide at that point after the 4 sessions, if we're getting a great momentum, let's continue every week. Just because there's something that the child has discovered and it's probably coming more and more to the surface, let's continue with the discovery rather than prolonging it for the 2 weeks. But if, for example, we've done the 4 sessions and it's been going really well, and they've taken to the coaching that, and doing the practices, holding themselves accountable, which we do a lot in coaching.
Okay.
We hold a lot of what we do accountability, because that also gives the child a sense of responsibility to be like, this is just not me sitting here with you talking. We've discussed all of these things. Now you need to go home and work on this. So if they're on top of that and they're doing it, then there's probably no need to see every week. I actually had a child that I've been coaching for the past 5 sessions, actually, and we were just about to go bi-weekly because she was doing really well. But then something on the 5th session came up, which was deeply emotional for her. And I was actually glad in a way that it became emotional, because I think that's something that she really needed to tap into, but she was resisting. And
Wow.
suddenly it came out in the fifth session, and she held into that vulnerability, and which just showed that the power of vulnerability is so important. She was able to express herself and became really emotional, but it's something she really needed. And she actually wrote to me after that session and said, "Thank you, Lana. It's something I didn't know I needed,
Wow.
but I really needed to express that." And I decided, instead of meeting bi-weekly, we just decided to meet every week, because I realized there was something that we tapped into, and it was important to continue that so that she didn't drift off into something else.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do you meet in person or online?
It depends. So I have a lot of clients that are still based in Singapore. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm not able to meet them in person. But we've been able to. I've had existing ones that I've met in person that now have moved on to online. But at the same time, I'm thankful that I've also had a lot of referrals from clients, and I've started a lot of new clients online. So I do fully online sessions with all of my Singaporean and international clients, especially. And in Kenya, I know there's a big need for it. I've actually been asked by a lot of friends who to coach their children, which now I think, since I've just settled down in Nairobi, I'm going to be going into that come in September when the new academic goes. But usually I'd always start the 4 sessions in person, because I think it gives that quality time as
Yeah.
well. But also saying that, I'd say sometimes I realize when I do meet in person, it again depends on the child, because I can see maybe they're not as concentrated when I'm there in
Yeah.
person. It's actually better for them in Zoom. And I think that's something COVID really taught us
Yeah.
when we were going through work from home kind of thing as well, and also where we had to teach remotely, is that some children thrived actually being taught remotely
Yes.
rather than in person. So again, it's very individual, but I'm able to assess that once I start the coaching process.
Wow, interesting. But you are from Kenya, right?
I am from Kenya.
Yes, you were
born and raised here, but
here.
I've lived 15 years outside of Kenya.
How
I've been in Asia for
amazing.
the past 15 years.
How
Yes.
amazing. So I wanted to ask you, what are just regarding your own personal challenges that you have faced and your loss that you have faced, are you still healing, and what kind of healing modalities and mechanisms do you use to help yourself through the losses that you have had?
No, it's a really great question. I feel my healing was by far not linear. It's a
It can
very
never
up
be.
and down road. And especially in the beginning, the days were really like surviving day by day. When you've gone through such a loss, it really hits you in the core of your body. You don't really know how to function initially. And it took me a bit of time, and I think that's what is really interesting, is time is a healer. I know it's a saying, but it really is true. I think time is a healer.
Yeah.
And with time and with the right modalities, as you said, so I actually started to seek outside of the conventional modalities. And I think I was lucky, because I had my husband, who was also already quite interested in other modalities, and not really, we definitely seek to counsel at first, but I'll be honest, it personally didn't work for us.
Yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't work, but it didn't work for us. So then we decided to go for holistic modalities, more me, because I also had to heal physically.
What kind of holistic modalities?
So I did pranic healing
Yeah.
to start with. And that was a very interesting one for me, because it was the first time I was introduced to a holistic modality. I'll be honest, as I said, I was not at all self-aware of these things until my loss, and until I got into coaching. And my husband had already been doing pranic healing, so he had introduced me to his master, pranic healer, who I'd gone to, because I wasn't only healing emotionally and mentally, I was also healing physically.
Of course.
I had given birth. It was a normal birth that you would be giving, and I actually did a C-section, an elective C-section. So having to deal with physical pain, mental pain, and emotional pain it was a real drag in the beginning. I was completely at my lowest point, and I was so impressed with pranic healing, of how just with that method, it healed me firstly physically.
Wow.
Of what I noticed. After I think a week, I was able to walk properly after having a C-section.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then from there, I started to delve into other modalities such as Reiki, body talk,
Yeah.
EFT. And then, of course, through coaching, I went through a deep essence of myself, of just mindfulness. Journaling was a really powerful tool for
Yeah.
me. I used to journal every day, and I actually have a book that, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter, that I journaled every day, and it's dedicated to her. That one day that I'll be giving her that, because it
That
took
is
me
so
through that entire
amazing.
journey when I was pregnant with her. And that's the thing, it showed me coping strategies, and it's ones that I still use today, because I say it's especially when you've gone through such a loss, you can't get over it. It's
No.
you're never going to fully get over it. But what I'd say is that you learn how to cope with it, and you find things that work for you. And I'm always, when I have those moments, I always seek help when I need to. I'm not afraid to seek the help, even though as much as I know, and I know that I can do it myself, I still think it's important to seek the help when you need to. So I still get in touch with my coach whenever I feel low or whenever I need to. I still go use those modalities. I was introduced to you by Sound Bath, and that was really amazing for me, and really a very powerful one, because I still didn't realize how much of the trauma is still in me, where my mind has almost coped with it, but my body is still processing it. And that gong bath was really magical for me because I was able to release. And I think that's the beautiful journey of also this through healing, is that it never stops, and you'll find different ways to heal. And I think I'm going to continue this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And healing is definitely not linear at all.
Yeah.
We have our moments. Like, I can never say that I'm healed. I always say I'm healing, because we're going up and down. There's always healing happening. If it's mental healing, if it's physical healing, if it's emotional healing, we have to go through this journey, and life will keep throwing things at us, and we just have to be ready to accept them. And also, most of the time, you can find the healing within you by going within with your meditation, pranic healing, all of that. But then it's also important to use the resources that we can. I'm so glad that you've signed up for the cacao gong bath.
Definitely.
That will be happening soon, and you're going to get to meet Chanvi, who is an absolutely amazing person, and she was a big impact in my life through my healing also. So I'm really, really glad that you're going to be able to meet her also.
Thank you. No, thank you. And I think, as you said, I think the more that you're open to it, that's when it's also going to be attracted to you. I think the moment that you take that step and open your mind to possibilities as well, and open your mind to, I've never done this before, but I'm going to give it a try, and not judge it.
Exactly.
That's also where the magic happens. Just let yourself go and give yourself the patience and grace to let it work for you.
Yeah. No, I agree. Totally. I mean, suffering in silence, especially after having a loss, is honestly really unfair.
Yeah.
It is really, really unfair to do that to yourself. Is there anything that you think we haven't spoken about today that you think that really still needs a little bit of awareness?
I think definitely one is building a community, around these issues. For example, with loss or with cancer, like you've had. I don't know about you, but for sure, I was one of my only friends, probably the only friend that had suffered a loss that I did. And I didn't have anyone to turn to. I felt really alone in my loss journey, especially in the beginning, because it was during COVID time. There weren't any support groups in Singapore, really. There was one Facebook, or nothing really open, and also, when you've gone through such a loss, such as a stillbirth, no one really knows what to say to you. They almost run away from you. A lot of friends, actually, I don't fault them. I think they just didn't know better. Just thought that it was better to give us space, but it really wasn't space we needed. We needed love, and we needed nurture at that time. And I think building a community and being able to care, for someone who's gone through a loss, or someone who's struggling, with an illness or anything else, that's really important to be able to provide that for them. So it could be through friends, through an online group, or what also I'm hoping to do in Kenya, which I did in Singapore, is also to provide a group for mothers who have lost, because that's where you identify as well. You can feel that loss of another mother because you've gone through that loss.
Exactly. You can relate. You can empathize a bit better than anyone else can, right?
Exactly.
And you're so right. This whole society thing, building a community, and this is one of the main reasons I started the podcast, is that because if I want to try and help somebody, the only way I can help somebody is if they first of all know about me. They know that I am doing this in the first place. And a similar thing for you.
Exactly.
It's like they need to know that you're doing this, and you're doing this not because of anything else, but because you have suffered the loss yourself too in your life. And I think that is an absolutely amazing and really important point that you have actually brought up, is building this society that makes people feel like they're not alone. You don't need to suffer in silence.
You don't need to suffer in silence. And for sure, just having people around you is so important. I mean, definitely in the beginning, I'll be honest, for me, it was I needed to process, to be alone and to process what had just happened. But afterwards, after time when, everyone has sent you their condolences and, and has sent you the flowers and all, after a few months, it starts to go silence.
Yes.
And that's when you really need it the most.
Yeah.
Because you're still going through that loss. It hasn't ended for you. And I really thank, and I still treasure those people, even people that I didn't even keep in much in contact with when they heard of my loss, who would just message me, Lana, we're thinking of you. We're thinking of you and Warren. We're thinking of Luca. I remember my best friend will always remember his birthday and send me, a birthday message for him, because for me, he's still my son. Every milestone is still counted for. And, just to have that is so special, because it means you're heard. It means you're cared for. It means that you're loved. And I think that's the most important thing that you can give anyone when they're going through a hard time as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's so true. Totally. And I think when I went through my cancer journey, and I did feel very alone, especially because I had decided not to go with the conventional way, and everyone who was around me, who was close to me, obviously because they cared about me and they loved me so much, they thought that I was making a huge mistake. And at that point, I hadn't actually shared with a lot of people, and I did share with a few of my closest friends, but I think they were also respecting my space and giving me that space to heal. But I hadn't shared the fact that I was debating to do the conventional treatment or not. At that point, I hadn't shared with anyone. And the main reason I didn't share was actually because I didn't want anyone else's opinion on this. And I think it's really important, like in my situation, I think with the decision that I was supposed to make about my own life, is that I didn't want someone else to dictate my future for me, or to manipulate my mindset, or drive me with fear. I wanted to make a choice for myself, and so I kind of closed myself off completely. And then when I started sharing, and then when I started showing my vulnerability, it was amazing. Exactly like what you said, I had all these people pouring in, people I hadn't even spoken to in a very long time, people I hadn't even heard of or anything, and just pouring in with their love and with their like empathy, and just being there for you, right? But I really like what you've said about this whole creating a space. I think that's absolutely amazing.
And important, as you said as well, it's important to give yourself the time and grace to heal. I think healing for everyone is really different. It's a personal journey, right? So it's also important not to compare. That I've gone through the same thing, but she looks better than me. She looks like, because you don't know actually also what's going inside. And I'd say the most important thing about healing is to concentrate on yourself. That's what's really important. Don't look at what's happening on the outside. Focusing on yourself. And that's why, for me personally, coaching was incredible for that, because I shut out, as you said, everything that was outside of me, and seeing, everything around me. I just had to focus on me. And I've never mentioned this before, but I had a struggle to conceive after my loss. And I think that was because of the trauma that I was going through with my son. And I needed to go through that emotion before I was then able to conceive my daughter after that. But I shut off everything, all the noise around me, and just focused on my healing. And I think that was a pivotal point for me, to understand that this is my journey. It doesn't matter how long it will take, but I will get there. And the moment that I had that, it clicked. It changed. And I got pregnant.
Amazing. That is so amazing. So we're going to end on that high note, because I love that. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Lana, for sharing your story, for being so open, for being so vulnerable. And I'm really hoping that with everything that you have shared, there will be more people who will come up to the surface and will be able to show their vulnerability, and to be able to share their own journey too, and find purpose in their loss. So thank you so much for today. Lots of love.
Thank you.